Okay, so in this video I just wanted to go over just a few other general examples of some common tasks that we can do with CSS. So in this first example here I'm showing how to center an image. So let's pull that example up. So we want to do center image. So let's get that going. Okay, so as you can see here we have a paragraph and another paragraph and then we have an image. And the way I'm centering that image is I'm specifying that the image needs to be displayed block. Remember that images are not block display by default. I'm setting a maximum width, and then I'm setting the margin to the left and the right as auto. So the combination of setting it to block display and setting the margin to left and right to auto and setting a max width allows this to be placed in the center as opposed to being in its normal flow, which is where it would justify. Well, actually, let's look at that and see what happens. So I'm just going to remove this class. So you can see there it shows up on its own line, but that's because it's really large, taking up the full page there. So here we're setting it again we're making it block level, and the autos allow it to float to the center or to be positioned in the center. This is an example of centering a div. So this is being accomplished by setting its margin to auto, and that applies to the top, bottom, left, and right, and then setting a dimension, so we're only letting it be 40% the width of the page. So if I change the width of the page, you'll see that it will resize to always be 40% width. And I'm just setting a little bit of a padding and a border and whatnot so you can actually see the extent of it there. So the key thing there is setting a width and setting the margin to auto. This is showing centering a text within a div. So for the div, we're basically doing the same thing. We set the margin to auto, set a maximum width there. And then for the paragraph, we're setting this text align center. So that's what allows the text to be centered. If we don't specify that, then it would go back to its normal position, which is justified to the left. If we add that back in, then again it's centering it. So this text align center is what's accomplishing that for the text, whereas the margin auto and then the width there is letting that is working for the div. All right, this is showing how to move a div to the right using an absolute position. So let me find that. So this is div right. All right, so it's moved to the right. And again, how that was accomplished was I set the position to absolute, and I basically set it the right to 0 pixels. So it's got to hug the right side of the page. The next example is now moving it to the left. So float left, and that's move to left. So that's accomplished by setting it to float left, and again setting a maximum width there. So again, it's the main thing here is float left and then setting a maximum width so it doesn't just doesn't cover the full extent of the page. All right, this is an example of formatting a list object. So let's pull that up. Okay, so here's our formatted list object. So you can see here we created a selector that applies to the unordered list. We're specifying padding, that's what gives it this gray padding, and we're also specifying a background color. And we're also setting this list style type, which changes the bullet type. And then we also apply some styles to each element using the li tag there. So we're setting a font size, a background color, and a little bit of a margin around it so they don't butt up against each other. So that's what gives us a bit of a margin there. So in short, you can apply styles to the entire unordered list or ordered list, and then also the individual elements within the list. This is a similar example for tables. So let's pull that up. Okay, so here's a table. Now, we basically applied some styles to th and t. So that's the head, and then the data. So the first row, and then the rest of the rows. So we're setting a bit of a padding. We're aligning the text to the left. We're creating a border, and we're creating a bottom border with a solid gray outline, and then specifying a font size there. And then as you notice here, when I hover over it, it gets a little bit darker gray, and that's because I've created this pseudo selector with hover where I've changed the background color. Yeah, so anyway, basically we're applying some styles to the th and t, the head row, and then the data rows, and then also pseudo selector to the entire row itself to give you the highlighting. Okay, we'll get into nav bars in more detail when we talk about Bootstrap, but this is just an example of a fairly simple nav bar. Okay, so nav bars are basically created generally using list objects, but generally as a default, your lists are going to display vertically instead of horizontally, and they're also going to have bullets or some type of icon on them. So the way you can create a nav bar is the following. So here I'm basically creating a div to hold the. Oh, sorry, actually I'm wrong. I'm creating an unordered list. And then inside the unordered list, I've got the list elements, which each hold a link, right? And then these are the different texts associated with each of those links. And then to get this actual style set up here, I'm setting a background color for the entire unordered list. I'm putting a border around it and a border color. This is important. I'm setting the list style type to none, which that gets rid of the bullets, which we don't want since we're treating it as a nav bar. And then we've set the margin and the padding to 0. And then for each list element, we're telling it now to be an inline block as opposed to its normal flow where it would be treated, where it would be they would go to different lines. And then we're setting a font size there. So let's just remove these so you can kind of see what it would look like by default. So that's what it would look like by default. And then again, by just applying these different styles here, we're able to get that to be more of a nav bar type setup. Now we'll look at this in more detail again and make more refined looking nav bars when we look at Bootstrap.